Okie doke. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Public Practice Accountants Club on Clubhouse, where public practitioner thought leaders, industry specialists, and accountants just like you discuss the hot topics in public practice and how they go about navigating the public practice landscape all around the world. So fundamentally, public practice has the same principles, dynamics, and challenges no matter where we are in the world. We might have some different tax seasons, busy periods in legislation, but at the core, we are very much the same. So our room this morning, and this is one I'm pretty excited about, is imposterism, friend or foe. This is a topic very close to my heart, so I'm excited to chat about it with you all. And just having a look at, we've got some new people in the Clubhouse stratosphere with us this morning, and anybody that might be listening into the live stream. Good morning, everybody. My name is Lynda Steffens. I am an accountant and author and an introvert, and I have been hanging around public practice now for just over 30 years. Goodness gracious, how time flies when you're having fun. But the last, probably 5 to 7 years, I've been very much educating and coaching accountants around how to take their businesses to the next level, and particularly to do with doing business improvement advisory and how to transition into that. And of course, my amazing co-host is with me this morning. Good morning, Kyelie Baxter.
Good morning, Lynda. You're an amazing co-host. I can check she wasn't on mute, so you think that I would have that figured out after all these times. No, I don't. Excellent. For those of you that don't know me, yes, my name's Kyelie Baxter. I have a public practice accounting firm called IQ Accountants down here on the Gold Coast. I guess our point of difference is we are purely paperless. So, everyone's pretty digital these days or heading towards that movement. We do not have one sheet of paper in our office, and I don't even remember the last time we bought paper, but it was years and years and years and years ago, and the time before that was like 4 years before that. So it's been a really long time for us. Interestingly, I feel completely underqualified to be discussing this topic this morning. So
that's your imposterism. That's perfect. That's exactly where we want to go. And I know that, what you've got here, guys, is myself and Kyelie. We're very, very open. We're very authentic. We're really quite happy to just tell it how it is. And so we hope that you will learn from our experience, and also be buoyed up by, encouraged and inspired by how we go about some of these things. So this is why I love topics that really test us out, Kyelie. So I thought I'd test you out this morning.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know, Lynda does all the work here for Clubhouse, and I just like rock up once a week and go, that's the topic. Awesome. So it's a complete, not complete surprise to me. I didn't know what the topic was because she told us all last week at the end. And ever since then, I've been thinking, this is going to be interesting. And Linda's so excited about it. So here we are.
Here we are.
55 minutes.
Exactly. And of course, we would love for everybody out there to participate with us if you want to. But I do understand imposterism. This is what probably stops us from participating, but it's okay. There's a couple of ways that you can participate, very easily. We certainly, if you're in the Clubhouse stratosphere, you've got the little chat function, and so that's just down on the left hand side of your mobile phone screen. You can just chat to us through the session. So we'd love you to say hi to us. Where are you listening in from? That'd be great, because it's always great to know where you're coming from. We are also a CPA public practice discussion group, so you can get your CPD and CPE points for listening in. So that's another great thing. And if you also happen to miss any of our rooms, they're available in a number of spots as well. So you can always go back, and if you feel like you want to cram another hour of CPD in somewhere in your busy life, you can listen to them on Clubhouse in the replays, or over on my YouTube channel as well. So there's heaps of places that you can get all this really great content and CPD. So just a very quick reminder before we kick off our conversation this morning that our intention is always to be positive, supportive, and collaborative as we come together in support of our amazing industry, no matter where we are in the world. Oh, one more thing. We almost missed our birthday, Kyelie. It's been 12 months since the first All Things Public Practice Room was run in Clubhouse. And that's what's now turned into the Public Practice Accountants Club in Clubhouse. So happy birthday to us.
Yeah, happy birthday. I wish I had some streamers or something.
I know, we need some poppers or something, right?
Yeah, I told you guys Lynda does all the work. She actually knows that. I had no idea.
I just
so much fun.
I still missed it. It was 2 weeks ago, but that's okay. We're going to take it today. We're going to take our happy birthday today. So we hope that over the time that we've been doing this, that our audience has certainly gotten some value out of our discussions, and of course, pardon me, Kyelie and I sharing our experiences with you. Please excuse my voice this morning. I have a bit of a nasty head cold. It's not COVID, thank goodness, but it's challenging me no end over the last few days. So we'll see how we keep going this morning. All right. Imposterism, friend or foe? Do you ever feel unworthy of your success despite evidence to the contrary? Yep, me. That's actually imposterism, my friends, or otherwise known as imposter syndrome. So common but highly uncomfortable, these fraudulent type feelings can have very far-reaching consequences. So surprisingly, around 70% of adults will experience imposterism at some point in their life. And the experts actually say that the other 29% are lying. So imposterism is out there in full force, and the majority and most of us, according to the experts, actually have these feelings. So unchallenged, it can actually prevent us from taking steps towards our goals or achieving the things that we know we can achieve. So it's an important subject to chat about. And we're going to have a bit of a chat today about what is it first, what is it actually? Why is it actually so prevalent today? Why is it worth talking about? How to actually recognize it? The difference between imposter feelings and imposter syndrome, because they are different, and some strategies for making it your friend. And I have to say, I really enjoy that, because over the years, my challenges around this, certainly I do feel like I have made imposterism my friend. We have a bit of a regular fight going on, but, it does help me to get to where I want to go and to do the things I want to do. So hopefully, like I said, you can learn from our experiences. All right. So how did I come across this topic? Why did I just pull this out of the blue? Well, I didn't pull it out of the blue. I never pull anything out of the blue. I'm a planned analytical accountant, okay? Nothing happens out of the blue, not particularly spontaneity. So, that's how I roll. But I love learning. I love learning about other industries. I love learning about what other people in other industries do and what they do well. And I particularly love taking some of what I learn and adapting it to the accounting industry. That's what I really love to do. So when we look at how we work, how can we make that more meaningful? How can we make that more purpose-driven? How can we be more efficient and effective in what we do? And that's what really gets to the core of why I do what I do. So when I work with clients in accounting, or I work with business clients, which I still do that as well, I do that for them as well. So I love this adaptation process and learning from others. So this topic popped up when I was squeezing in some of my own personal development, and I try to do that at least 2 to 3 times a month. I don't always get it in, but sometimes I do. And podcasts tend to be my go-to, or replays of things. And I was listening to a podcast about imposter syndrome, and I just felt myself feeling super, super strong about talking about it, because it's something that I most certainly have experienced. I continue to do so. I don't believe it will ever leave me, and neither should it, because, like I said just a little while ago, I've made it my friend now to some degree. And if I have these feelings and I'm experiencing this, then I'm banking on a lot of other accountants do. And actually, I don't have to bank on it. I actually know they do, because I talk to a lot of accountants, and I experience this daily. So the podcast, if you are interested, it's an Australian ABC podcast called This Working Life. But I will pop that, the link to the actual podcast, so you can listen to it all if you want to, in the LinkedIn notes or in the LinkedIn post of the live stream, if anybody's interested in getting that. Okay, so in where we always love to start, accountants, we love a good definition, right? So let's start with a definition. Imposter syndrome, what is it? So imposter syndrome is loosely defined as doubting your abilities and feeling like a fraud. It disproportionately affects high-achieving people who find it difficult to accept their accomplishments, and many question whether they're deserving of accolades. Now, does that sound like anybody that you might know? Kyelie, does that sound a little bit like you sometimes?
Yeah, 100%. I definitely have had imposter syndrome affect me over the course of my career. Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. I prepared for this week as well by listening to podcasts about imposter syndrome. I love it because you can work and listen at the same time. So it's multitasking, which suits my efficiency brain.
And see, everybody, I don't do all the work. She does do some work. She's just kidding.
But proportionally, Lynda does all the work. But really, I think it's really interesting to listen to people's stories about how imposter syndrome has affected them and their careers over the course of time.
Absolutely.
So yeah, like for me, absolutely. You know, I can remember. This is an embarrassing story to tell, because I think in some ways it makes me sound quite arrogant, but I'll tell it because the person that I was with was so shocked by my behaviour.
Yeah, okay.
I was it was a mild, like couple of days away, and we'd gone to, I think we were in Melbourne, and they had this big gala dinner, and they had their once a year annual dinner, and they had this awards thing. And I had actually never been before, so I didn't know really what it was. It was like a black tie event, and when I got there, I was like, oh, this is pretty nice, like, righto. And I knew that I had been nominated for an award. I didn't realise it was like the sort of award. And then I won. And I literally heard my name be called out, and I was surprised because I didn't really know I didn't understand the importance of it. And literally the first thing that went through my head was, if I am the best they have, it's really bad for our industry. and I'm not joking, like that is what I thought. And my girlfriend Paige, who was with me at the time, she used to work for me, and she was like, fix your face, go up there, fix your face. Okay. As I was thinking that, my face pulled this like, face without even thinking, because that was just my gut reaction, because I was so overwhelmed and surprised. And that in itself is probably one of my pivotal imposter syndrome moments. Just because, like, who thinks like that? Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Well, the reality is, Kyelie, we all think like that, you know, and particularly it's imposterism, you know, like I just said there in that definition, it proportionately affects high achieving people. And accountants are really known for that we are, that's in our profiles, that's how we rock and roll. And we don't like to try stuff unless we know we can do it well. So this pulls us back from even trying things that are new, things innovating, getting up and perhaps doing some public speaking or things like that really, really scare us. And so I can share with you one of my famous stories. Look, this goes right back to very early childhood for me. And you only get this understanding, I think, when you actually reflect, when you actually take the time to look at what's happened over your lifetime and why you're where you are today and all of that sort of bizzo. But I remember being a 14-year-old girl, and I have this story, and I know that some of you listening in would have heard this story because I tell it when I speak or when I open up some of my learning courses. But it's a 14-year-old girl who had trouble delivering her oral presentation at high school, ended up being very, very ill over that. Mum comes and gets me from high school, asks me, of course, what's wrong. And I look at her and say, Mum, I'm just not good enough. And even telling that short version still breaks me up. So, I remember that, and that stuck with me the whole time because I knew at the age of 14, I wanted to be an accountant. That's all I wanted to do. It made sense to me. It's what I wanted to do. And I felt if I couldn't talk to people or I couldn't present to people, and these are my classmates that I'd known for years, I'd been hanging around with them, and I couldn't do this oral presentation in front of them without being physically ill. And it just rocked my world. And, from that day on, it's been an awareness of what this imposter syndrome is. And I think the challenges that I've then faced over the years to sort of come to where I am today. And particularly, probably 7-8 years ago now, and I decided to launch this effort of getting out there amongst everything and telling accountants my story and helping accountants. Wow, that imposter syndrome came back in waves and waves, and so I still feel that every single day. But we are able to make it our friend and to sort of push through some of these things. So we'll talk about that a bit later. But that's my story. And you're right, Kyelie. I think listening to others' stories are really important because we can learn from that. And so anybody who has felt this, we'd love to hear from you in chat or any of your stories. If you feel like you want to share any of those, please raise your hand. I know might be very uncomfortable, but if you feel like you want to do it, we'd love you to come up and tell us all about it. But anyway, let's get into why imposterism is quite as prevalent as it is today. And it's it's not easy. We won't necessarily go there, but the world has simply gotten smaller. That's really what it's about. The internet or the World Wide Web or the Internet of Things or all of those different things that we call it, and the sheer amount of information that we have at our fingertips, it's instant, it's regular, and we see it so often. So something this podcast had talked about was that we tend to make comparisons then that perhaps are not relevant. And we see this outside in accounting, we see this outside everywhere. We see perhaps if I go to young girls comparing themselves to models, that you would have never been able to do that 20 years ago because you never had that information or those visual impacts, So when I started my business, if I think about this in the context of me, I compared myself to my friends. I had friends who were accountants. I compared myself to business people in the local area. who I perhaps saw at professional development activities or networking events, and even some of the really successful business people in my community. But was I looking at comparing myself to the best and most successful business people in the world? Probably not. I probably wasn't really aware of them. But now, is it really right that I compare myself to the Melinda Gateses of the world and the Elon Musks and the Richard Bransons or the Oprah Winfreys? Probably not. So if you think about it, when we compare ourselves, that's why, some of this can really plague us more and more and more. The world has gotten so small. And it's really hard for us not to compare because we're high performing individuals again. So, Kyelie, do you find yourself looking at things on social media or anything like that where you find yourself your story before about if I'm the best I've got, oh dear, so that's part of it, I think,
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, like to be an accountant these days, you have to be pretty confident in what you do. Like we give clients advice all the time. You can't be a wallflower, right?
No.
I think for me, it comes when I have to step outside my comfort zone.
Yeah. Okay.
So even even doing Clubhouse with you every week, I just try not to think about the fact that you have this saved and put it in 50 places, right? Because I'm like, what if someone else watches and thinks that what I say is just wrong?
Yes.
And you just have to really think, well, why do you do it anyway? So how can you still get up and do it anyway?
Exactly.
And because I suppose the good outweighs the bad.
Yes.
There's people getting stuff out of what we're doing here in this group that outweighs the possibility that someone might do that. And, people are entitled to their opinion and it will happen. Like who cares? Who knows, But I think we should probably talk about the checklist of, what are the characteristics of imposter syndrome? Because I think it's very easy to confuse with anxiety.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Something else that's really common for people as well.
Absolutely.
Characteristics.
Yes. Okay. Have you got some there for us?
I do.
Okay.
So basically, there's like this list of indicators, and Lynda, you've probably got some as well.
Mm-hmm.
But one of them is workaholism.
Yeah.
So working really long hours, not taking time off, struggling to relax.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you might do that anyway, and it's not about imposter syndrome. It's just about capacity, which is a conversation for a few weeks' time, apparently.
Yes.
But, it's an indicator of one, imposter syndrome, and another one is perfectionism, that you're never satisfied, that you struggle to delegate, you micromanage, you want to make sure you get it right, so you have to do it yourself.
Yes.
Unfailing strength, never asking for help or being too independent. That one sort of goes hand in hand with perfectionism. And also total expertise, the need to know everything yet not knowing enough.
Yes.
I was really struck by that little list because in accounting, like you will drive yourself atty if you can't deal with having, not having total expertise, because the legislation is changing all the time.
My gosh. And we've seen that over the last couple of years, right? Like impossible.
Over the last couple of months.
Yeah, exactly. It just keeps going and going. Yes. Like
so right now it's tough. So I think it's those things where it's really that whole, am I good enough? That's what it all points to. The am I good enough?
Yes.
Not am I as good as this person, or am I doing this, or am I doing that? It's am I good enough? And is it affecting you? Like it's that self-doubt. And then there's things that reinforce that self-doubt, like lack of inclusion and the role models that you were talking about when you're scrolling on social media and having a look. And they do say that this imposter syndrome affects women more than
men. That is correct. Yes, it does.
Which I find really interesting, but I think it's because it does affect people that have anxiety as well. So that if, you know, people that have anxious qualities definitely tend to suffer from imposter syndrome more.
Yes.
And more women are diagnosed with anxiety than men.
Yes.
So I guess that's how that works.
Absolutely. I love those. I went tick, tick, tick to your checklist, you know, and certainly have in the past. And, you know, that's parts of how I work that I have to constantly be aware of and manage. And I think that's what having these conversations are about, Kyelie, is to bring awareness to these things, that these feelings are quite normal. They're very normal in accounting, and they're very normal for the general population. So there's nothing unusual about them. There's nothing wrong with us. It's just what it is. And so when you can just face up to it is just something and it is what it is, and you've got an awareness around some of that, then you can choose whether to make it your foe or your friend, and how you go about that. So I'd like to, and this is one area that particularly interested me in the podcast as well, was about what's the difference between imposter type feelings and imposter syndrome itself, because they are different. Now, the story that gets told on the podcast, which is a really cool story, and I relate, podcasts are great and stories are great if you relate to them. And I particularly related to this one. And so the way the expert in the podcast explained this was that imposter type feelings are like when you're driving down the motorway, and next thing you see police sirens go on behind you, and it's like, oh my goodness, what did I do wrong? What have I done? And you think it's you. And then next thing, the police car whizzes straight by you and you hadn't done anything anyway. So that's an imposter type feeling, that you just doubt yourself in the moment, or doubt yourself around, things that really you don't necessarily have, have anything to worry about. So that's an imposter type feeling. Where it turns into imposter type syndrome, they are feelings that are persistent. Okay, so feelings that start to really take over, and you actually start to believe that they're true. And these are the things that can hold you back. And I think that's where you were heading, Kyelie, was around, that's certainly where anxiety will come into it as well. And anybody that may suffer from anxious type feelings, that would certainly kick into place there. So do we just have imposter type feelings, which most people will feel at some time? Completely normal human reaction. But once you calm down, you think about it, it's like, I know, that's okay. I can have a go at this, or it wasn't me, silly me, and so you can overcome the feelings. The syndrome itself are much more, important things. So I don't want to make light of imposter syndrome, because it is a really debilitating thing once it does, if it does get a hold of you, and it does for some people. So, and there's certainly, if you listen to any podcasts or anything around this, you will hear of people that have those very debilitating conditions. So I would think for most of us, we tend to have the imposter type feelings. I certainly do. I don't know if I reflect if I would ever have thought I had imposter syndrome to the point where maybe in my early years, I could almost call it imposter syndrome. It was debilitating in that it stopped me doing a lot of things. It stopped me doing a lot of sporting activities, because, again, I would end up physically manifesting some, sickness or conditions. So, yeah, maybe in my early years, I might have had what you would typically call imposter syndrome. How about you, Kyelie? Do you feel like it's the feelings, or can you identify some time when you might have had the actual syndrome itself as well?
Yeah, I think if we talk about having the syndrome is when it actually stops you from doing anything. A lot of people would connect with that.
Yeah.
But actually, if it stops you from doing one thing, that's not necessary that you've got the syndrome, right?
No,
so I think
exactly.
this whole imposter thing is quite grey. It's very difficult. But what you have to do is, I think if you can recognise it, then know what to do about it. It's if you cannot actually put those steps in place, then that's when you have a problem, because you have to overcome that fraud factor. I think you used that word, Lynda.
Yeah, I
fraud,
did.
right?
I did. Yes.
And you have to help shift your focus away from that self-criticism. And so I think it's more about when you're in the moment, it feels like the worst thing ever. But if you can shift your focus away from that, then it's just a moment in time. Whereas if you cannot shift your focus away from that ever, and it's repeats and repeats and repeats, then it's a bigger issue. Okay.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely.
So I've got some steps to help overcome that fraud factor. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes, absolutely. Because, that's where I think we want to hear the practical steps of things. And I see, Kyelie, your video's just popped off if you can see that anywhere.
Kicked me out of the room.
Did it?
Back in.
Oh, dear.
Said that you don't love me anymore.
Oh, it did not.
It did. It said Lynda kicked you out of the room. So in Clubhouse, we actually, Lynda and I can see each other. Lynda does a StreamYard video as well, which is how she distributes it on her other channels. And it did kick me out of the room. I didn't.
All right, fair enough.
We'll continue on. Okay, so the steps to getting out of that feeling of imposter syndrome. And now I'm saying that word so many times it sounds weird when I say it. So I'm going to talk about overcoming the fraud factor, okay?
Love it. Overcoming the fraud factor.
Yeah. The first one is awareness. Like all you need to do is actually start recognizing when it happens. And if you can simply recognize when it happens, that is a win in itself, right?
Yes, it is.
At first, you have to train yourself. Like you'll only realize it later, like at night in bed when you're trying to go to sleep, and you're like, that's why I felt like that. But you have to intentionally give yourself the space and time to think about it. The second one is accomplishments. This is one that I really struggle with, and this is about celebrating success. And I'm cool with it for myself, but I'm not cool with it for my team. Like when we achieve things, I should really celebrate that. More, other than saying, "Yeah, we did it. Good job." Move on.
Yes. Yes.
Like you need to celebrate your achievements. Yes. So one of the examples on the podcast that I listened to was that you should create like a folder on your computer for all of like your achievements that you can go back and look at. Or it might be kind emails from clients, or it might be cards that you've received, or like good things happen. But sometimes the bad things outweigh the good things. So it's create an accomplishments folder or spot, and then when you are feeling like a bit of a fake or a fraud, go back and revisit that.
So what can happen is the experts talk about it there, that because we don't take the time to do some self-reflection or even to question ourselves, we actually get out of touch with our own abilities. And so that's exactly what that accomplishments folder or your brag book or whatever you want to call it is about. And and I think you raise a very good point there, Kyelie, that in accounting we can be so focused on productivity and work output and all of these sorts of things, we forget the celebrations. We're often too busy nitpicking about the tiny little detail that's not quite right. And don't get me wrong, that's important. We do need to be right. And it is important to do that. But we've got to balance that out with, hey, I did a good job, or, hey, team member, you did a fantastic job today. Thank you. If you have some type of team meetings or something like that, bring up anything there that you can celebrate. I have one firm that I work with, they call it warm and fuzzies and bouquets. So if a client comes and gives some sort of really nice feedback to a team member, in the next team meeting, they give that team member a bouquet of flowers, and not literally, they just talk about it that way and share what that client has said. And if it's a team member to team member thing, they talk about it being a warm and fuzzy and say, thank you for doing what you did. I celebrate what you've done. So there's just these tiny little things that you can do. They might feel a bit awkward and a bit weird to start with because they're not what we normally go about doing, but they're very, very useful. You come around topics like this is the type of stuff, just small little bits that we can do that might just help us. And so, yeah, absolutely. So what else is there to help us with imposterism, Kyelie?
I've got admit your mistakes. So this one is hard.
Yes.
For people to do. And it's probably a whole other, discussion. But, we all know no one is immune from bad decisions, choices, conversations. But they don't define us. Like a single act doesn't define us. Like we're all so much more than that. Like we all are leaders in our own way. So you have to find a way to turn a negative into a positive. And the question that I always ask myself is, what can we learn from that? This didn't go as well as we expected. What is our positive takeaway? Because I think there's that saying, many successes are tucked into failure or something like that. Yes. And it's so true. Like you have to see the good in the not so good. And then take it as a learning outcome. So definitely be able to admit your mistake, because if you can't admit that something went wrong in the first place, then you're not going to be able
You're never going to get anywhere. That's exactly right. And I talk a lot about intelligent failures. That's exactly what that is. And when we go into leadership, which we're going to talk about next week, being able to admit you're wrong, huge, absolutely huge, because that's around creating psychological safety around you, because we're human, we stuff up. We're not perfect. So to try and hold ourselves to that level of perfectionism, it's impossible. You are going to fail. That simply is what's going to happen. So learn an intelligent failure, look at it, learn from it, and talk about it. I think that's the big thing. And that's one of the other things I know I've got on my list about helping us cope with these imposter type feelings or imposter syndrome is talking about it.
100%.
Yeah. Yep.
And then my last one is attitude. So I think you have to really focus on your attitude when we're talking about imposter syndrome, or you think that you're experiencing these sorts of feelings, this fraud feeling, because criticizing or complaining that you're not as good or that you can't do that really keeps you focused on those emotions and those feelings. Yes. And frustrating heightens when we focus on things that aren't in our control, and those things aren't in our control. I can't do that. Well, if you're putting a limit on yourself, then you probably can't do that. Yes. And that perception reinforces that sense of undeservedness. So you can only control two things, like your attitude and your actions. And if your attitude is you can't act, then both of those things are no-goes, right? So Absolutely. If you're not satisfied with something, then you have to find the solution to turn it around. And sometimes that solution involves reaching out and getting help from another person, getting that other person's perspective to help them change your attitude. And, it's not just one step, it's like a series of steps or something like that. No. But I think a lot of people don't talk about this thing that we've got going on, and then they just let it turn around like a thing in their head, and it becomes a problem because, we all know that saying, mountains out of molehills.
Yes.
Like it's a small thing that the more space you give it or the more thought that you give it, the bigger it becomes in your brain.
That's exactly right.
Attitude had to make the list, even though it sounds super harsh, because we need to recognize our own attitudes towards ourselves.
Exactly. And this awareness that you're talking about, and realizing, like you said, that's the first big win, is just gaining the awareness around it. And see, this is why I want to talk about these topics. They're brilliant. I love them. So yeah, absolutely. All of that is so, so very important for us. And what they also say is that we already know that imposterism is, it's quite prevalent generally. It's a little more prevalent in women than it is in men. But also it is more disproportionately more prevalent in industries where we are measured. Oh my goodness. Do we get measured in accounting? Oh yes, all the time. There's this lovely thing called a timesheet and write-offs and so yes. So clearly we are right in the boat for these types of things. Okay. So Martin has asked us in the chat, Kyelie, is imposterism useful? Now, of course, I just responded absolutely back to him because I know through my experience that it is useful. And certainly that's where the podcast that I listen to goes. It talks about it being useful and spins it into that positive light. So, yes, it talks about making it your friend. And I know that if I didn't have this imposterism little voice in my head, I wouldn't have done half the things that I've done. So I talk about it, and there's one story in the podcast I listen to that this particular lady, she names the little voice in her head Kevin. It's, oh, that's just Kevin. I don't need to listen to Kevin. He's just rambling on at the moment. I'm just going to go off and do my own thing. So if that helps you, you know, by giving it a name or becoming aware of it or, you know, recognizing it, then do it. Think of a name. For me, I talk about having the angel and the devil on each shoulder and having the little argument in my head with my ego, you know. And so that for me now I recognize was me naming my imposterism. And so the angel always says to me, you know, oh, come on, Lynda, you want to try this? And the devil goes, nah, you don't have to do that. What do you want to do that for? That's ridiculous. And the angel goes, you know, you really should try. I think this would be really good for you. And then the devil goes, nah, just stop it. Eventually the angel does win out, you know, with most things. But that's how the conversation goes on in my head. Pardon me. And I always make the joke that if you have you know, too many voices in your head, well, that's a whole nother issue, and we don't have time to talk about that today. But I do generally only have the one voice floating around in my head. So yeah, you know, so maybe you've got a Kevin, maybe you've got an angel, I don't know what it is, maybe you've got something. So giving it a name, you know, making it real, that's okay. That's part of that coping process and actually starting to make it your friend. So what they say too, yeah, Kyelie?
I was going to say, I actually experienced a year of yes. So I
I like that.
New Year's resolutions.
Yes.
I normally do a one-word thing, so I'll focus on a word for the year. And
yes,
ages ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, my word of the year was yes. So that really helped. It really took away that, oh, should I say yes to this? Should I say no?
Yes.
Yes was always yes. You have to say yes. Totally outside my comfort zone.
Absolutely.
And it makes you really, yeah, like all of those imposter feelings came up, but it was too late anyway because I'd already committed to do it. So
I love that. The year of yes. Oh, I want to have a year of yes. That's really cool. Well done. And I think, you know, if you can reframe this and actually be grateful for it. So yes, Martin, it is absolutely useful, but you have to be able to think about it, be aware of it, and reframe it. And that's, you know, where we wanted to get to in this discussion today. So being grateful for it, because I know from my personal experience, it's helped me to strive to do absolutely better, to work harder on things that I don't find comfortable. Public speaking's one of them. A lot of people see me public speaking and I talk about being an introvert and how I hate public speaking. Everyone goes, oh, that's complete rubbish, Lynda. And they roll their eyes at me, you know, but that's a skill I've had to master. But it's the imposterism, the angel and the devil for me, that's helped me do that. I think also too, as accountants, we're very humble people, and imposterism helps make you even more humble. I don't know that we need to be any more humble, but that's what it is. So when we're humble, this helps us to work in teams. This helps us to help others. This helps us to accept the opinion of others. And, you know, to be a better listener, to be compassionate, to be kind. Funnily enough, imposterism helps us to do all of those things. And when you actually voice it and talk about it, you'll find that you'll probably bond with a lot of people over that. There will be a lot of people that have this. Like I said, the stats say it's 70% experience this, and the experts say the other 29% are lying. So there you go.
Yes, I agree, Linda. And I think as far as, is imposterism useful? Absolutely. And I think as leaders, if we've got a team, we need to consider that as well. So when we're thinking about how we're building our team culture, there are things that come from this whole "am I a fraud" that we should be thoughtful of. You need to build a culture where it's okay not to always know the answer, because spoiler alert, we don't always know the answers. You want to make sure that you're rewarding teamwork as well as hard work. You have to make sure you're looking actively at your staff for these feelings of fraud, because they can be crippling. Like, what if they actually get the syndrome and they're sitting there and they just go downhill? So it's really one of those things where it's really good to know about it and recognize it, because it's not just about us, it's about the people that we manage and that we're surrounded by as well.
Absolutely. So, and I think, maybe the challenge for everybody listening today, or anybody that listens to this after the event, is to find a little story, reflect on something, find your own little story. And perhaps, if you have a team or you have colleagues, just to share it, just to talk about it. And you may be no, you won't. You will be absolutely surprised about the reaction and the engagement that you probably get back from that. So, like we talked about next week, we're talking about about leadership, and that's part of it. Admitting your mistakes, admitting that you feel like a fraud sometimes, talking about it, all great things. So I thought that we would finish off just a little bit around a summary, and this is very much from the podcast that I listened to around imposterism. So the strategies for dealing with these types of feelings or the syndrome, if you do have that, and we very much encourage that if this is a debilitating thing for you and it's affecting many areas of your life, please go and seek some help over that, because that's important to do that for your own well-being. So the next time Kevin pops into your head, or the angel or devil's talking to you, how do we go about doing it? So first, realize it's completely normal. There is nothing wrong with you. It is what it is. And that feelings are not facts. So you can feel something, but that doesn't make it true. Now, we're pretty good at dealing with facts, and we're pretty good at keeping our emotional cues on the down low. So that should be something that we should be able to do quite well. If you think about, we've done plenty of exams over our lifetimes, right? So walking out of an exam and you felt, oh my goodness, I stuffed that up. That was terrible. I failed for sure. And then you end up getting a pretty good grade. How often have we done that? So just because we have a feeling doesn't mean that that's a fact, okay? Look at the evidence. Force yourself to actually look at what's going on around you. And I think go definitely to that fact file, that brag book, that accomplishments folder that Kyelie was talking about there before. All the compliments, the nice things, the good feedback that you've ever got, because, you can get one piece of bad feedback and you can have 99 other really good feedback, and the one you'll end up focusing on is the bad one. So you really need to swap that around a little bit and focus on the good stuff, because I guarantee that will outweigh it. And the final one is to be brave and take action. So yes, imposterism is absolutely useful. It can be your friend. Be brave and take action, because at some stage you just have to take that next step. Otherwise you are going to miss out on some real opportunities. So just like Kyelie said, the year of yes, it'd be interesting, Kyelie, was there a lot of opportunities that came out of that year of the yes?
Yeah, I had read about it a lot before I did it, and people were saying, like, it's life-changing.
Yeah.
And it is not only from an opportunity point of view, but it just changes your perception of yourself, because you end up saying yes to things that you would never have said yes to, because not only because you were fearful of being a fraud in those spaces, but also just because you didn't want to do them. And what we do is we really limit ourselves all the time through the choices that we make. So when you say yes, I'm not saying I didn't do some things that really wasted my time that year, but I'm also saying that I was super pleasantly surprised by some of the things that I did that I just wasn't expecting there to be a great outcome with. So I would highly encourage people to think about even having a week of yes, or a month. A week's probably too short, but month of yes.
A month of yes.
You know, you just absolutely say yes to everything, but it's everything, right? And it really, it's amazing what can be uncovered.
Absolutely. I remember.
Yeah, it's probably a different discussion.
Yes, it is. I remember talking or listening to a presentation from one of our previous Governor Generals here in Australia, a very high profile woman. And she talked about just saying yes and working the details out later. And, you know, as an accountant that's a planner, is like, oh my gosh, I can't do that. That's ridiculous. But when you think about it, you can. And so I know that I tend to go down that line now. I'll say yes, and then I freak out about it, and then I work out how to do it, you know? So that's what's taken me down my personal development path, I suppose, as well. But oh wow, what a great room this morning. Look at that. We're right through to 50 minutes in and getting ready to wrap up. So if anybody's got any questions for us or would like to say hello, pop up on the stage this morning, please, it's your opportunity to do it now. We'd love to hear from you. Pop it in the chat or reach out to us and say hello. But next week, the 30th of March, at 7 a.m, Kyelie and I will be back here again, and we'll be talking about learn to be a great leader. So unraveling all the bits and pieces around leadership, and certainly something that is very important to the accounting industry, in both that we are looked at as leaders, whether we like it or not. And I think then overlaying that with this imposterism, we often probably don't feel like that. But what can we do around learning about being a great leader, and what will that mean for our teams, our businesses, our own professional and personal lives? So that's what we're going to delve into next week. So did you enjoy this morning, Kyelie?
Yeah, it's a great conversation. You know, like, I think in reality, it's a difficult sort of
yes, it's a bit confronting.
Feeling.
I understand.
It's a bit confronting, but yeah, no, good topic, Lynda.
Yes, you're welcome. All right, everybody. Well, we hope that you have a wonderful day and a wonderful week, and we will see you back here next week to talk about leadership. Thank you, Kyelie. Baxter, amazing as always.
Thanks, Lynda, for all your work. Talk to you next week.
Talk to you next week. See you, everybody.